Tonight's Modern Men is powered by the Hero Initiative. Are you interested in becoming a hero? Go to theheroinitiative.org to see how you can be a hero to those comic creators in need. Hey, how's it going, guys? It's time for the X-Men special part 2. That's right, tonight Drew gets a chance to cleanse his palate of these awful DC crises, or at least maybe in his opinion. I still love them. But anyway, we're happy to be here talking about X-Men. We're going to cover X-Men Days of Future Past tonight. Probably one of the first X-Men reads I ever did back in the day. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Before we get into the read, what we're going to be talking about tonight and getting into the chat, we got to get into tonight's panel. So, Andy, how you doing, man?
Doing well. Good to see you guys. This beard's getting long enough to maybe hide some sentinels in.
Oh, yeah, that'd be scary. Ugh, those micro sentinels from the Morrison run. DruManchu, baby, how you doing?
This thing is free of nano sentinels. We've made sure. It's a mutant-friendly Krakoa approved beard growth here. I'm very, very happy to be talking some X-Men, be talking one of the greatest, most classic Marvel stories of all time, the story that set the tone for what all X-Men events would be in the future. But I want you to know right now, Carson, we were talking about this guy. We're going to go into the chat, I'm sure. Your next move is going into the chat. Right, but I just wanted to point out to you that Ruben Guzman is in the chat.
Man.
We were just talking about you, buddy.
If you're still in the chat, Ruben, you won my contest. This package right here is yours. Please hit me up and I will mail it to you. So, like seeing Ruben Guzman, I was just talking about. I was like, man, he won my contest. I hadn't seen the guy. So, Ruben, if you're watching, hit me up and I'll mail you that package behind me. All right. Besides Ruben, we got some more wonderful folks in the chat. We got Ricky Markstadt. Which big shout out to Ricky Markstadt once again for creating that Comic Core Discord. We actually used the Comic Core Discord server over on the Modern Men board to come up with some suggestions for this week's poll. So it's already posted. We'll cover that at the end of the show as usual. But definitely check out Comic Core Discord. I think I'm going to try to use that in the future to involve the community a little bit more in getting suggestions for show topics and poll reads and all that stuff. Because, hey, at the end of the day, we're all on like 3 to 5 shows a week, and we run out of ideas. So we need your guys' ideas to keep this show going the way it has been. So definitely click Ricky's Discord link there. Join the community. Hop in. Give us that feedback. We need to keep going here. And big thanks once again to Ricky Markstadt. We also got the Great Legend Show. What's going on, man? He's talking about Hydra for some reason. Who knows? But happy to see the Great Legend in the chat. We got that deadbeat robot hanging out. Enough about him. Then again, the Sentinels did attack the X-Men. So, yeah, you don't want to be too crazy, those robots, I suppose. Andy, here's one of your buddies. We got Skeff's Comic Knowledge. What's going on, Skeff? How you doing today? And then we got the alumnus himself to this show, JB from Discovery Bay. What's going on, JB? I know he loves him. Some of this era of X-Men as well. And hopefully, there's Drew, there's Andy. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody else. But yeah, tonight we're just going to be talking about some of our favorite X-Men stories. It's going to be a pretty loose conversation. We're just going to have fun talking about X-Men, hopefully getting some chat suggestions. But first, we got to talk about some Days of Future Past. So like I was saying at the top of the show, this is one of my first X-Men reads that didn't come out of the 90s, basically. So when I got into comics around that time, it was all about Onslaught and Age of Apocalypse, which, obviously that's another one of those weird alternate future stories that, probably is loosely based off of what happens here. But around the time I was in college, I came home for Christmas and, family exchanged gifts or whatever. My brother actually got me some Claremont X-Men books that he got off of eBay for Christmas. So back in the day, he probably got them much cheaper than they're actually worth now. But he got me Uncanny X-Men's issues 1 through 29 through this issue right here. So this one I've had in the collection since probably about 2002, 2003. Of course, the one where everybody dies. I always love this cover. Issue 141's up on the wall. It didn't come down for this, but got that one signed by Chris Claremont. But yeah, like reading that whole run really opened my eyes to like what X-Men really is, because watching the animated series and reading the 90s stuff, I can see where a lot of that great stuff was based, and it comes from this Claremont run right here. So I think even though this technically is probably a Bronze Age read, I think it's pretty important we cover it here on Modern Men, because a lot of the modern X-Men, let alone these modern futuristic tales, I think spur from this read right here. So Andy, what has your exposure been to Days of Future Past? You said this was your first time reading it. You're on mute, buddy.
Yeah, it's actually the first time I've read it. It's as somebody who's, I've not read anywhere near as much X-Men as I really should have. It's always one of those things I've kind of thrown on the back burner. But when you talk to X-Men fans and people that have read all of X-Men, this is one of those reads that they talk about prolifically as Days of Future Past, and it being one of the best reads out there. And it doesn't disappoint, in my opinion.
All right, Drew, I know you're a huge X-Men guy. What was your first time or first experience reading Days of Future Past?
My first experience with Days of Future Past was kind of the cartoon version of Days of Future Past that took place on the animated series. And then before the movie came out, I said to myself, I haven't even read that yet. How am I going to be mad that they screwed it up? So I actually read Days of Future Past after X-Men First Class, the movie, came out to get an exact retelling of that story from the horse's mouth before the Fox movie properties decided that they were going to ignore pretty much all of what it was and change it. And I think a lot of it they got right, but a fair amount of it they got wrong. And that's the first time I actually remember going back and reading it. Now, I had a lot of the Claremont run when I was a kid and would just read through it. For the most part, at that age, I was mostly checking out the art, getting, some character knowledge out of each issue, but I never read them in the right order or all together. So I was losing a lot every time out of the experience. So not until later in my adult life did I ever go back and actually read the story.
Nice. So one of the topics that came up for us in our chat while wanting to cover this is, what exactly does Days of Future Past consist of? When I read it and interpreted the poll, I only read issues 141 and 142. But Andy, I know you looked at the trade on, I'm guessing, Comixology, and you ended up reading the whole thing. What all did it cover besides those two issues?
Oh, wow. It's essentially a big filler of catching somebody up. For a first-time X-Men reader, it's actually great. It goes all the way to the beginning with Scott Summers and how everything started and how they trained, and then how the second team was developed and melded in. And it's quite dialogue heavy, but it's actually great from a first-time reader's perspective, where it explains a lot of stuff. It explains a lot of things that have happened, where kind of a lot of the major points, so the stuff that they've done with Magneto or fought Magneto over the years, and then a lot of the other characters. And it actually filled a lot of holes for me as a fan of X-Men who's just not caught up on a lot of stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, this is making a lot of sense. And it added a lot to that 2-issue run, because at the end of the day, it was just two issues, which I was kind of surprised, man. I think it would have been amazing to see this in 4 or 5 issues, but that's not what they did.
Yeah, for sure. And if I remember right, because I kind of looked at what the trade, I think it starts at like issue 138 or something like that.
It does 138, then it does annual number 4, I think.
Oh, it even has an annual in there. Okay,
and then it goes into the storyline where Logan goes back to Canada to fight the Wendigo and try to get Canada to accept his letter of resignation. So he goes back up there to meet half of the Alpha Flight team, and that Wendigo battle takes place again, and it's actually pretty good. It's a pretty good read.
Yeah, it says that the original graphic novel contains 138 through 141 and also annual number 4. So yeah, it's a lot more reading than we did.
Yeah, because I think the other storylines that it kind of covers is obviously the introduction of Kitty Pryde, which it's a pretty important one to cover because she's obviously one of the main backbones of this story, or Kate Pryde, if you will. And then the reason Cyclops isn't there is because of the whole Dark Phoenix saga that just happened. And
that was
they lost her, and Cyclops has taken pretty much a sabbatical from the team, leaving Storm in charge. So I think at least those few single issues catch us up to where we need to be in Days of Future Past. So basically, let's just get into the start of 141. Unless, Andy, are there any other notes we need to cover before then?
Well, the last page on 140 was pretty good, and that's where the Blob breaks back out.
Oh, okay.
So that was pretty killer.
Nice. Yeah.
Just set up with some Fred. Fred's coming.
So 141 starts off in the somewhat distant future, where it covers this bleak, awful future where you see headstones of these heroes you know and love. Obviously, the cover of this speaks volumes when you see apprehended or killed on most of your favorite mutants there. And it kind of follows Kate Pryde, not Kitty. She's a fully grown adult by now. I believe it takes place in the year 2013, in the distant future of 2013. And she's just trying to, get across New York, basically, which is just nearly an impossibility. There's sentinels everywhere. There's not a lot of heroes to be left in the world. And you kind of quickly figure out the only X-Men that are really left are Storm, Wolverine, Colossus, and her first appearance, I believe, Rachel Summers. And for some reason, Franklin Richards, which he doesn't last too long. But Drew, what do you think of this team right here?
I think it's great that Magneto's in a wheelchair. Kind of speaks volumes. Yeah. Very, very poetic there. I love Franklin Richards as a character because I love what Hickman did with him in the Fantastic Four run. He's super freaking powerful. He can create the whole world in his hands. Nursery rhyme song style. And he can save everybody from onslaught, put them in a bubble. There's some great stuff Franklin can do. In this story, all he pretty much does is dies.
Yeah. What about you, Andy? What were your impressions on this team here?
Like I said, not being as caught up as I want to be on my X-Men reads, this was, for me, just an open-minded take of that dystopian future. I liked how Logan led her to that specific area in New York where she was going to get jumped and get attacked, because then that means when she went back to that camp and they scanned her, she wasn't lying. She really did get jumped. That's why she got held up. And then that, what is that, page 3, I think it is? 1, 2, 3, page 4, the bottom of page 4, where she's walking by all of the headstones. And you get Scott Summers, Kurt Wagner, Charles Xavier, and she says every day that they go by, another one's added.
It's pronounced Kurt Wagner.
Is it really?
I mean, that's how he says it. I don't know.
Now, one thing I did kind of want to cover, since this is Modern Men, we're mainly acclimated with modern reads. And Andy, I want to throw this question mainly at you. Did you have a different type of experience or troublesome time reading this, since it's in that like Marvel 1980 style rather than the current style where there's like less thought bubbles and narration, and nowadays you rely more on the action of the panels and what's going on rather than descriptors and stuff? Did you find that a little bit jarring or any interest at all there?
No. Well, I'll say that Comixology does an awesome job with this read. It's presented really well. In fact, I want to think that Comixology may be a little over embellishing on the colors on a screen, and it might feel better in the hand and look better in the hand, but in Comixology did a great job of that. But yeah, it was a 2-issue arc that read almost like it felt like I was reading 4 issues. It's very dialogue heavy, very descriptive, but that's kind of where they need to be at this point with this dystopian future. And they're letting you in on a lot of thoughts. They do a great job with being able to depict the difference between an actual conversation thought bubble, or a bubble where it's actually somebody's thoughts, and then in a bubble where it's actually they're communicating via telepathy, right? Yes. So you can actually see the difference. There's like hash marks around the telepathy, like the talking between their minds. The thought bubbles are actually kind of like have almost like a cloud look to them. And then the conversation ones are actual conversation looking ones. So I think they did a great job doing setting it up the way they did. It reads phenomenally well. Growing up in the 80s, this reminds me a lot of early Punisher runs that I was reading as a kid, the way things are laid out. So I took to it pretty naturally and enjoyed it quite a bit. But being a 2-issue story arc, it's dense. They pack a lot in here. So there's actually a lot of reading for you to do, but it's done very well.
What about you, Drew? I wanted to throw that question to you as well.
Well, for the great legend, I'm going to make myself big because he's been telling me to direct this show in the chat the whole damn time. So I really enjoyed how this read. I go back and read a lot of older books from the 80s, late 70s, even up through the 90s, where I find the format of the read very dense just based on the way that it's put together. And a lot of that has to do with the old way the old Marvel method of comics. You know, the artist would get the plot from the writer, would draw out the panels, and then the writer would have to fit his story into what the artist had drawn. Lends itself more to a lot of thought bubbles and exposition panels and things of that nature. But I think that this is, Claremont has a way where he kind of his stories really flow nicely, and you get a lot of the characters out of their thought bubbles, and a lot of exposition happens in the thought bubbles, and it kind of just allows you to enjoy this story as it comes and as it goes.
Oh, okay. It's on me now. Interesting. Yeah, I agree. Like, it's just funny because I did highlight a comment, and I agree, William Bird. I miss narration and thought balloons in comics. It seems like those have been kind of phased out, where you're reading this one and pretty much everything everybody is thinking. There'll be a dialogue bubble, and it'll be connected to a thought bubble, and I don't see that in comics anymore. So I know I feel a bit dated.
What happened now?
Oh, I accidentally clicked the button. Sorry.
See, Legend, this is why we don't do this in the middle of the show.
There was a really point, so I'm going to keep going. Yeah. So basically, they come up with the plan. Rachel Summers is going to project the consciousness of Kate Pryde back in time to the 1980s X-Men, or precisely 1980 X-Men. And that's where we catch up with the team from 1980, which has no Cyclops. Go ahead, Drew. You got your hand up.
Yeah, I had a question real quick. I'm going to make myself big for this question. Carson, do you mean that like Kitty Pryde doesn't develop new powers to send Wolverine back in time?
I was going to save the whole movie talk for the end, but yes, an actual telepath is the one who sends memories and consciousness back through time, not a creative power from Kitty Pryde, which that was my number one issue with that movie as well, Drew.
I agree. It should have been a Kitty Pryde movie.
Yeah, for sure. And yet Ellen Page, she was already a star. Like, why not use that star power? She can go find Wolverine and convince him, and then they do the whole thing. But anyway, we'll save that conversation for
bunch of dummies.
Later.
That's why. Bunch of dummies.
So anyway, we get to experience young, very new Kitty Pryde. She accidentally walks into the danger room while they're practicing, and shenanigans happen from there. And then we get to meet our team, which is mostly a lot of the team from the future. You also have Angel in there, which I was kind of hoping to see a little bit more Warren Worthington in this, because he's there, but he doesn't do a lot in this story. For whatever reason, I don't know. He must have been being used in other books, but he is still on the team. And then, of course, the incredible Nightcrawler. So, Andy, what did you think of this 1980 X-Men team?
I enjoyed it a lot. And I really liked the time and effort they're putting into the Danger Room, right? Where they actually showcase a lot of their powers and what's happening. And that's where they actually test Kitty, right? And she passes with flying colors with her eyes closed the whole time. They make that joke. That was pretty good. And that's actually where she passes out, right? And where her consciousness is traded. I love seeing the Nightcrawler in this. I feel like I never get to see enough of him. And like I said, they do a really good job with dialogue and description and really filling in some of the blanks without it being too overly heavily handed, if you will. Because let's be honest right here, this story arc, there's not a tremendous amount of action. So they do a really good job conveying the storyline and progressing the storyline. The speed at which it goes is pretty good.
Yeah, so when all that happens, you find out basically why they ended up in this awful future. It has to do with Senator Kelly, which if you've seen the movies, you kind of know who Senator Kelly is at that point. He is killed off along with Moira McTaggart and Charles Xavier at this basically peace talks conference. And there's the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants who executed this, and that Brotherhood is ran by Mystique. So, Drew, do you have any context where Magneto was at this point? Because I'm not sure.
No, I like, to be honest, I didn't even really think about that when I was reading this. When it comes to the X-Men history and the Claremont stuff, the way I've experienced it is kind of in chunks. So I haven't sat down and read the whole thing from top to bottom. And I really don't know. I don't have any context for where Magneto is during this story.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely have to look that up. But yeah, basically they are charged with saving Senator Kelly and making sure that obviously Charles Xavier and Moira stay alive as well. And that's where, they kind of start going back and forth in between the timelines, which I always dig in these type of stories. You just see the future X-Men. They're just trying to survive at this point and keep Kate Pryde protected. And they're not. It's not going well for them, and that's kind of where it segues into issue 142 with that side of the story. On the other side of the story, they're just trying to get to Xavier and to get him saved before the Brotherhood gets there. So you meet the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, which Andy, you mentioned the Blob. He just got out, so he's back with the Brotherhood. Mystique's leading this whole ragtag crew. And you got other characters there like Pyro, and then the one lady who can see the future. And there's a couple other characters. But what did you think about this, Drew? Do you like the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants?
You know what? The only thing better than mutants is Evil Mutants. And they're so much fun. I love the Brotherhood. You get to see Destiny in the end of this book pulling her part right before Kitty gets to save the day. But you get the Blob in there. You get Mystique. These are just some of the greatest characters in X-Men lore. I love every time Fred shows up and just starts wrecking shit. He's my favorite. Shout out to Fred in the time in Age of X-Men where him and old Betsy got to get it on. And he had a little love thing going on with Psylocke. So I love Fred, man. He doesn't get enough love. Like Fred is like the evil Glob Herman, in my opinion, and they're both great characters, and they should get more shine.
What about you, Andy? What did you think of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants?
At first, I had some reservations, but I think it played out really well. I really liked the Blob's. He really didn't care for Mystique, and having a woman who's running the show feels very 1980s-ish, right? And he almost went to attack her with a statue, and it disintegrates from what's his face? Sorry,
Avalanche.
Yes, thank you. And Pyro, dude, Pyro's hairdo, man, that's out there. I liked it. I feel like it was a good dynamic between the group in these issues without being something that's kind of rehashed and boring and just the same thing over and over and over. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I always kind of like the Avalanche. I feel like that character's never got enough use or credit, especially like I don't know if he's really ever even been in the movie universe, but he really shined in the cartoon X-Men Evolution, which he was like almost the leader at one point of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants when Mystique left him high and dry. He got to lead the team finally, and he was the rival of Cyclops on that show. So I always thought that was like one of the more underutilized characters in the world of X-Men was Avalanche. But going into kind of issue 142, this is where you kind of get the action-heavy stuff. The future X-Men, they're just getting annihilated. Like, I don't really know what else to say about the future storyline. Literally, when they say this issue, everybody dies. In the future, everybody dies. Like what you see here, this isn't one of these like new modern variants where it has nothing to do with the comic. Wolverine literally leaps into a Sentinel and gets completely vaporized in this, like you see on the cover. Storm, she doesn't fare too well either. She pretty much immediately gets wiped out. And probably the most telling part for me that happens in the future is when Rachel is kind of in the minds of all the X-Men as they're dying, and she gets to embrace the rage of Colossus because he's pretty much last man standing at this point. Which, funny thing, in my opinion, is if you would have picked from all the X-Men they have here, even though it's just a handful, I was a little surprised they picked Colossus to have the last stand, basically. Obviously, nowadays it would probably be Wolverine or maybe even Storm, but they have Colossus there, and they keep referring to him as like this gentle giant and, you know, this really nice guy. And the fact that Rachel felt him from being this nice guy to being filled with nothing but rage. You don't even need to see the scene play out, and you can feel the impact of it. So, Andy, what did you think about Colossus's last stand that you didn't even see play out?
I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the way they depicted, or not depicted it, but they told that part of the tale, right? She's feeling them pass away, and then all of a sudden, all too soon, Colossus is gone as well. I really like the fact that Colossus got some rage mode time, and they talk about it. He even talks about how he's found it and he let go and accepted it, much like Wolverine does. I think he said this is like how Wolverine feels when he goes into rage mode, and Colossus got that. We got that for him at the very end, and just maybe it's just the way they're trying to service the story. But Wolverine jumping up and just getting vaporized like that, maybe they were just trying to keep with the pacing that they wanted to keep for this story. But you get just that adamantium skeleton laying there, and I'm like, oh, God, they're really doing this.
Yeah, well, it's kind of...
They went with the fastball special.
Yep.
And they didn't realize that the Sentinel was up to the task to hit that stinky cheese out of the park, and that's what you get: smoldering adamantium in a pile. Like, yeah. I mean, come on, Sentinels. They were ready. They were ready for that. They were ready for the fastball special. Should have thrown the changeup special.
Oh God, yeah, we get the fastball special 3 or 4 times in this. This is great.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of funny how almost overpowered Wolverine is now compared to his like original incarnations. Like Gummer put it perfectly in the chat. Classic 80s Logan. So I completely agree with that. But over in 1980 side, we get the X-Men. They're at this press conference. Immediately, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants starts attacking. And it's an all-out brawl, basically, where, you know, the onlookers, they're pointing out like, oh, the mutants are using this forum for their battlefield. And, of course, Senator Kelly's in the middle of all of this, which I guess you find out later he's actually a mutant. Drew, do you have any recollection of this one?
No, not really at all. And it kind of brings me back to the X-Men movies where they turned him into a jellyfish.
Exactly, man. Yeah.
That was pretty funny.
Yeah, I always liked that actor from the movies. It was the dude who played Willard, that crazy movie about rats back in the day. That's the only thing I can think of when I see that guy in that X-Men movie. But yeah, the Senator Kelly, like he's the main one. They're trying to really sway his opinion here because obviously if he dies, apparently in 1984, they're going to have a president who just hates mutants and wants to regulate mutants as much as possible. So influencing Senator Kelly for the better is one of Kate Pryde's missions here. But in the brawl, they don't know who is going to be the one to assassinate Senator Kelly and Xavier. But basically, I think it's Mystique takes him out with nerve gas, but then she ends up fighting with Nightcrawler. And then it turns out to be that psychic lady with a crossbow trying to kill Senator Kelly. But who leaps in just in time? Kate Pryde shows up, saves the day, and then immediately loses her like future memories. So in that, she becomes Kitty Pryde again. So, Andy, any notes you want to share from this big fight between the X-Men and the Brotherhood?
No, it was an excellent fight. They do a really good job considering how much reading we've been doing and not getting a lot of action. I'm looking at these panels. They do a really good job with the action. That fight with Nightcrawler and Mystique was great. It makes me want to dig deeper into Nightcrawler and Mystique and that dynamic. And because he at one point sits back and he's like, "You look just like me," and he wants to know more and wants to know why. And it made me as a reader like, yeah, let's go there. Let's look at this. But different time, different story. And my favorite part sitting right here, Colossus grabs the big iron beam or the big steel beam and like puts it right over Wolverine, and they just launch the blob right up into the air.
Yeah.
And then Colossus just smacks him right in the junk.
Drew, any other notes on this fight?
Yeah, like who saves the day? Kitty Pryde. You know why? Because she is the best of us. She is the best human being on Earth. She's the best mutant amongst the mutants. She's a great leader. She was the best Star-Lord. She's just fantastic, and that's why she'll forever be my fake fictional girlfriend, Kitty Pryde.
She is one of the best.
One of the best.
Drew.
Classic.
But yeah, like we haven't had a chance to even talk about the art yet. Now I'm gonna put all three of us on the screen for this. So, Andy, what experience do you have reading John Byrne's artwork?
Not a lot, honestly. And opening this book up, I had to do a triple take at the cover to make sure that this is 1980. This doesn't feel 1980 to me at all. This really felt 90, 91, 92 to me. I feel like it's really ahead of its time back then.
I think it's timeless. It's timeless in a way. Like, you look at it and you know it's X-Men, right? But like some of it looks kind of 70s, some of it looks kind of 90s. It has this timeless Marvel Age of Heroes kind of feel to it, where you look at it and you know it's X-Men right away, without knowing when it takes place or who's drawing it. It doesn't take much to find out that it's John Byrne. His figures are iconic. His ladies' faces are iconic. The way that Byrne works is just great. I got a John Byrne Fantastic Four poster over there on the wall, nice, being glared upon by my lighting. So, but like, yeah, John Byrne, man, absolutely phenomenal. Claremont does this wonderful character work with these X-Men and the villains and everybody that is on the page. But this book just screams quality via its art to me, more so than the story.
Yeah, when I think 80s Marvel, the first artist that comes to mind is John Byrne. Like, just from his iconic work on this X-Men run to She-Hulk to his Fantastic Four work to everything else. I mean, he's definitely one of the best. My first experience reading John Byrne, I think, was actually with Wonder Woman in the 90s. Like, after issue 100, like, he took over the writing and the art duties, I think, going issue 101 on forward. And I just thought that was like some of the coolest looking art back in the day, let alone those Brian Bullen covers, the arc before that he didn't do, by the way. But I always like to mention Brian Bullen when I can because he's awesome. But yeah, like when 80s Marvel and John Byrne, like there's probably no better artist in the 80s, in my opinion, on the Marvel side. I still like me some George Perez, but we won't get into that, Drew. All right, let's get into the chat here. We got a couple good quotes here. We got William Bird. He says, the Kate/Kitty kiss irritated Byrne to no end because instead of older Kate just fading out, it proves the apocalyptic future still happened, not what he and Claremont agreed on. Yeah, when you always have time travel involved, you always kind of got to involve that timeline that started all this. So if you completely erase that timeline, then everything just becomes a paradox, and then a lot of head scratching happens there. So you still kind of got to say that timeline existed, even though they're avoiding the time. They even throw like a one line in, I believe, where they're like, we don't think this is going to work anyway. It's probably just going to create a separate timeline or a parallel universe.
Right.
So even the people with this plan don't fully even believe in this plan, and they have a pretty good point not to, in my opinion.
Gomer had a comment earlier I wanted to bring up, because we kind of discussed this before we started the show. The whole dystopian trope is used up in comics, and especially in X-Men comics, but this did it first and probably best. And I think that this story has the legs to run marathons, not just sprints. I think that all the X-Men since this moment have been fighting their future. That has become what the X-Men are about, more so pretty much than any other one thing. You know, it's like, oh, acceptance amongst men and all this like equal rights and all that stuff. All that is secondary to them fighting for their future. I think Hoxpox definitely set up Dawn of X and everything Hickman's doing now in that vein. Age of Apocalypse was all about fighting a dystopian future. Not so long after this, we get the introduction of Bishop, who is coming back to fight another dystopian future. I think that this kind of started that trend in a lot of ways, and I think it nails it. I think it does a really great job. And if you kind of discount the ending, then you don't leave it open for the future to be something that is something they're working towards being a better future, not only for mutant kind, but for mankind as well.
And you know what's interesting with the dystopian future aspect? This is 1980 this was done. Could this have had a hand in all those amazing movies I grew up with in the 80s? Terminator, the dystopian future. Terminator was like 84, 4 years later, and a lot of other great franchises and sci-fi movies that, you know, could this have played? That's a rhetorical question I like to think about, is like, could that have played a role in how the 80s and the 90s were molded with great sci-fi?
Yeah, and then the one factoid I did read about this on Wikipedia, of course. I was just searching around right before the show. Allegedly, Chris Claremont drew inspiration from Doctor Who in 1973, and I believe it was a serial called The Day of the Daleks. And there's of course Doctor Who. There's always time travel involved, of course. So yeah, for sure. There's always inspiration from somewhere, and this story definitely inspired a lot. We got Gore Vidal in the chat. What is going on, man? He says, I think Claremont will be remembered as one of the most influential writers of the comic medium. What he did with the X-Men and the Wolverine miniseries in the 70s and 80s was transformative, yeah, to say the very least. And then William Bird says, fun fact, Byrne didn't draw the cover to 142. The cover was drawn by Terry Austin. Thank you for that. I did forget about that whole thing. And then Chris Barrett is mentioning some of his favorite 80s artists like Bill Sienkiewicz, Mantlo. And then we got Downright Nerdy Podcast. What's going on, man? One of the best right there. And we still got Ruben Guzman. Don't forget, man, you want my package back there. If you're still in the chat, send me a message. But anyway, one last stinger at the end of this, I almost said episode, this issue. We get a little bit of Sebastian Shaw with some political figures, and that's always a scary thing. And then he introduces Henry Gyrick, which he's always a bad dude too. So Drew, you want to tell us about these couple characters?
Oh, well, you got Sebastian Shaw, who's got ties. He's the Black King. Let's just get it out in the open there. He's the Black King of the Hellfire Club, which means not only is he a mutant, not only is he a complete and utter dick, he's got millions and billions of dollars which to be a mutant dick with. And he's grabbing some power here, and he's doing so with Gyrick, who is just one of the all-time bastards in fiction. Gyrick is just a bad guy, man. Pretty terrible human being.
Andy, what do you think about these characters?
It makes me wonder what's going to be happening next further down this storyline, because we got a good bit of Sebastian Shaw in Hoxpox, right? That was really my introduction to that character, is reading that whole run, getting back into X-Men. That Hoxpox run did more to get me back into X-Men than anything ever did. So what that did for me there, this is doing for me wanting to dig deeper into these characters and the dynamic of what's happening now. And I think they leave this story arc at a really good not quite a cliffhanger, but definitely not dropping dead. As a reader, this makes me want to go forward and see what happens next. It really does.
Yeah, and then with that cliffhanger, we pretty much end the story right here. So, I mean, how do you even sum this one up in terms of a score? But I guess we'll go ahead and give it a try. Andy, you gonna give this a CGC grade?
I gotta go 9.6. I really do. In my opinion, like Drew said it best, man, the artwork is timeless. I struggled to come up with the vernacular to really describe the art as I was going through and reading this, and I just keep sitting here staring at it on screen. And I want to find the original issues that I got somewhere back here and pull them out and see what that art experiences is like in hand. And it'd probably be a bit higher of a grade in hand, but like Drew said, the art's timeless. They did a great job with the pacing of the story, in my opinion, even with as much information and as many things as they're basically almost bogging the reader down with. They paced it well enough. They did a really good job with the layout. I felt like I was stepping into a comfortable home when I was reading this book, really. I felt really comfortable with this, but it wasn't crazy. It wasn't, I don't know, man. I think Drew said it best. Timeless, man. 9.6.
What about you, Drew?
This thing is a 9.8 green label, a little restored. Because I feel like as a part of a larger something, it has more impact. I think when you take these two issues out by themselves, it's just two issues of comic book, and it's a really, really great story. I think the themes go on and live on and on, but I think that it's made better by the continuity that follows it and uses it as a launching pad to try new things than it is as its story by itself. It is a phenomenal story. Don't get me wrong. I just think that we look back on Days of Future Past in a more positive light because of things that were done with these characters with these same themes later on that were expanded upon because of what Claremont and Byrne did in this book. So I would say, it's really great, but maybe there's a piece of tape taping one of the pages together inside.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and give it a 9.8. Like, I was gonna give it a 9.6, but more I think about it, this story was such an influence to so many things that came after it, and it just shows, like, today one of the biggest comic tropes there is everything is just written to be in a trade or a hardcover later down the line, I feel like, which is great. It's a great way to read things, obviously. So everything has to be like a 5-issue or a 6-issue arc. And then when you get those like 1 or 2 one-off issues in a full run, it almost kind of feels like a filler issue. I almost kind of wonder if this was like their version of a filler issue just to get to the next story arc. If it was, this is how it needs to be done, like, all the time. It didn't slow down the story. It didn't detract from anything. It kept so many good plot threads going and then told a timeless story in the middle of all of it in 2 issues. So, and
they also used a brand spanking new character to tell this like time spanning story about, where the X-Men came from, where they're going in the future. And the way that they were able to encapsulate that through the eyes of a new character who then comes back and she's like, no, I'm not new. I've been around forever. Listen to me. Listen to what I have to say. It's kind of a cool deal. I liked it.
Yeah, so obviously we all liked it. Now let's talk about the Days of Future Past movie. So,
let's
Drew, I know you already had a few things to say about this, so you don't like this movie too much, it seems like.
This is universally seen by like the film community. I use that loosely. People who talk about movies on the YouTubes, and like critics, and like every time somebody brings up X-Men movies, they're like, well, the wonderful Days of Future Past. This movie is worse than X3 X-Men United or X3 The Last Stand, in my opinion. It's worse than Wolverine Origin. It's just not watchable, and it's certainly not rewatchable. And the things that are good about it are good in spite of this movie. Of course, there's a great Quicksilver scene. Of course, Magneto's a badass at the end. We finally get a good look at some Sentinels, and we get X-Men fighting Sentinels and getting killed. But unlike this movie, those two things do not happen like simultaneously on the same path where you could cut back and forth and see, oh, we're in the future fighting for the past and we're in the past fighting for the future. That could have been cool. Instead, you get, Wolverine again, for no reason. He could have just been a part of the freaking team. But no, we have to have Kitty Pryde, who has the ability to make herself incorporeal and phase through solid objects, now has the ability to phase Wolverine's mind through time. Like, what the fuck? Like, look, think about it this way, guys. Only 9 out of every 4 fucking mutants has psychic powers. Right? Only 99 out of every 23 mutants has psychic powers. Can we not grab another fucking psychic? Can we not grab a psychic who's probably sitting right next to her, like, I don't know, Charles fucking Xavier, to send him back through time? It's like they heard, oh, Kitty Pryde was in this scene. Let's get Ellen Page to do it. And she's like, well, I guess I'll do it. I'm not doing anything else. I can come show up on set for 3 days. And don't get me wrong, she's brilliant in the part they have her play, but they should have sent her back through time. It should have been a Kitty fucking Pryde movie, and it wasn't. It was a Wolverine and Mystique movie, which all of these movies are Wolverine and Mystique movies, except for the one little pocket of Magneto Charles bromance happening behind the scenes. Like, they're all Wolverine and Mystique movies, and it didn't have to be a Wolverine and Mystique movie. It could have been really, really good, and it's really not. The movie that came after it, that X-Men Apocalypse, best of the new X-Men movies. Challenge me about it. I will debate you about it in an open forum. I will fight you in the street. I will play tiddlywinks against you in order to prove my point. But yeah, this movie, the adaptation of Days of Future Past is not fucking good. It's just not good.
I'm glad you got that out of your system, Drew. And
but that Quicksilver scene for the win.
Andy, have you seen Days of Future Past, the movie?
I did. I actually think I rented it off of Amazon a couple of months ago. And honestly, it's not as memorable as I'd hoped it would be. I enjoy Eric Lensher as Magneto. I really do. So anytime I get to see him, I really like... it's just not that. The movie itself was not that memorable. Drew is right. It was not a Kitty Pryde movie, and it definitely needed to be a Kitty Pryde movie. And it was a Logan and Storm and Mystique movie. And it's one of those ones where it's just like, okay, let me get this under my belt and watch it and carry on with the series of movies. Because this was like the last X-Men special we did. I made it a point to sit down and watch everything in order. And that almost is a disservice, because then a lot of those movies just weren't very memorable.
I think they went to such lengths in First Class to be like, okay, at the end of this movie, guess what's going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Brotherhood of Evil Mutants is going to form.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Professor X is going to be in a wheelchair. Beast is going to be blue and furry. And then they just undo all of that between the movies to make it this whole thing of like, oh, he's got this hormone thing that he plugs into his spine that turns off his mutant power but makes him walk. Like, what in the ever living fuck is going on? Why is Beast ever not fucking blue? Why? Like, once he's blue, he should be blue always. Like, why is he not? I don't get what they did with any of this. It's just, oh God, it's terrible.
Yeah, Chris Barrett's right. That Quicksilver scene with the Magneto escape was pretty awesome. That was pretty
sure.
Sweet.
And I'd watch Fassbender read the fucking phone book as Magneto.
Yeah.
But I don't want to see him stopping a plane from crashing because woe is me, Xavier is crying about his spine. Like, none of that was interesting at all. And it was just wasteful. And we could have gotten more build toward an actual X-Men film, but instead Wolverine has to come in and be, the stepdaddy to these guys and be like, oh, your real dad's coming back soon. Settle down. Like, it was just crap.
Was First Class the one with the Magneto origin story at the beginning?
Pretty much.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That was okay. I'm kind of getting a little bit mixed up, but that was First Class. That was a different movie, but God, yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think First Class is still my favorite of the new batch, basically. I think a lot of the problem with the newer X-Men movies and kind of even the older ones is just the studio control. Like they had a vision, they knew what they wanted, so they kept hiring, for instance, like Bryan Singer to give that to them. Whereas around the time First Class came out, I feel like Fox was kind of lenient on the X-Men stuff because they kind of had two bombs in their pocket in X-Men 3 and Wolverine Origins. So there was a lot less stress to make a solid movie, in my opinion, because they had two bad movies behind them now. Now they could just make a movie just to use the property, basically. That's what they tried to do with Fantastic Four, and that whole thing sucked. So on the other side, they hired, I believe it was Matthew Vaughn, to make First Class, and somehow it actually was successful. It had a good cast with these random mutants because pretty much all the other ones were used up at that point that were worth using to that point in time. Even Gambit, which we won't talk about that. So they was like, wow, we can use this here. We have Jennifer Lawrence. She did great in the first one. McAvoy and Fassbender were awesome together. So now they can make this whole new line of movies. But then someone's like, oh, hold on just a minute, playa. That was the best Teddy Long impression. It's like we got all these other we got all these other actors that were great in the other ones. What if we combined the two somehow? And there's this awesome storyline everyone likes called Days of Future Past. So let's somehow combine everything that's good from all of these good movies. And sometimes that's not the answer to the successful movie either. Obviously, it worked for the MCU and going into Avengers Infinity Saga, but it just, something didn't quite stick with Days of Future Past. I still enjoy the movie overall. I think it's a fun movie. You have to look past so many things, though. Like the whole Kitty Pryde thing, I don't understand that, why they did that. They had this whole rogue cut on the side where they cut Anna Paquin completely out of the movie. I still haven't seen that cut, so I don't know why that happened. Don't know if it's worth seeing.
It is literally 2 more minutes of movie, and 30 seconds of that is Rogue showing up at the end of the movie.
Yeah, and Drew, you put it perfectly. Like, why create a power for Kitty Pryde when you have the best psychic of all time sitting right next to her? Great point there. But like I said, you get some good moments, just the two versions of Xavier Magneto. Like Fassbender and McAvoy have great chemistry on screen. So when those two are together, it's great. Same thing for McKellen and Patrick Stewart. I could watch a movie with just those two guys all day. I think that's the biggest missed opportunity in X-Men movie franchise history, that you didn't just have those two in a movie together. That would have been great.
There's some really great comments in the chat that I really want to get to.
Yeah, go ahead.
A couple of them are fantastic. But first, I need to say something to you, Carson. You said we weren't going to get into Gambit and how he was used in the Fox movies. I just want you to know that that's Taylor Kitsch. And Taylor Kitsch is Tim Riggins. And anybody who's a fan of this channel will remember when we used to do a show talking about the Teen Titans. My love for Minka Kelly is only surpassed by my fandom for one, Mr. Tim Riggins. Tim Riggins for president. Just want to say that right now.
All right,
Tim
6
Riggins.
degrees of Kevin Bacon there.
6 degrees of Tim Riggins. First of all, William Bird said, Quicksilver listening to the Walkman makes no sense. It would have to play music so fast we're going to hear that song while doing all that. I agree. Let's cancel him.
That's a good
Stevie
point.
B Comics says Fox is to X-Men what Disney is to Star Wars. I will say that I can't agree with you there, because Disney made Rogue One and Solo and Rebels and The Mandalorian, and that is the best Star Wars has been since the end of The Empire Strikes Back. So, I mean, come on, buddy. You got to give them credit where credit's due. They're shooting about 60% from the field. It's not great, but it's not as bad as what Fox has done with the X-Men. What do you guys think?
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, at least Fox gave us X-Men 1 and 2. And like I said, I rewatched Apocalypse the other day based on your recommendation. Movie. It's still a solid movie, even though it still has that classic Fox X-Men trope of like, let's introduce characters and they'll just be in the background.
Yeah,
Like,
but it also
want
explains
more,
why everybody's blue.
Yeah, I want a more Angel and Psylocke. I mean, you get Archangel. I want to see some more Archangel.
We got way more out of Psylocke than I expected.
And that still wasn't much.
She's got 3 lines, bro. That's way more than I expected.
Let's talk about how they wedged Bishop into this, right?
Yeah, the Bishop in Days of Future Past, like, and then even Blink was in there. They're like, who remembers Blink in Days of Future?
I remember Blink, but not from Days of Future Past.
Yeah,
I want to see more of Omar Sy as Bishop. This was a weird place to wedge him into the movies. It did nothing for his first appearance, really. The book is still relatively inexpensive for a first appearance.
Dollar
There's
bins.
even a little bit of tension, or it's contested as to whether one issue or the other is his first appearance a bit. But I mean, like, you're talking about a major budget movie that hit with a first appearance in the movie for a character, and it did nothing. They just weirdly wedged him into this. And it's a shame because I thought Omar did an amazing job as Bishop. I'm like, that's a really believable Bishop. This looks good. I got excited, and then they just underserviced the character, and it was like, well, that was kind of pointless.
Yeah, and I think, and that's where like they ultimately failed with Dark Phoenix. I think we can agree, like, Dark Phoenix is one of the worst movies they created.
It's worse than X-Men 3.
When when you see them not introducing a single new character and a whole franchise where every movie introduced at least some character, at least in the background, they just gave up. They didn't even try. They just put a movie out to keep the property, is pretty much all they were doing at that point.
Gore's got a good comment in the chat too.
Yeah, go ahead.
He felt the same way watching the Avengers Infinity War films, which he did not like. He found them uninspired and sentimental. They can't compare to Starlin's masterful books, but they don't upset me. I can see where you're coming from there, Gore, but I think that when the MCU movies, they've kind of told you what's going to happen when they call something Civil War. There's going to be a clash between two sides, and there's going to be some cool elements and panels that were brought up in that comic. But overall, it's going to have the heart and the spirit of it and not be exactly that same thing. I will agree with you on Avengers Endgame. As much as I loved Endgame and as much as I enjoyed it more as the capper for the universe, for the Avengers films, and not so much as like an adaptation that I wanted. Like, I feel like the story was very sentimental and uninspired. I think time travel to fix things is a stupid way to go about things, which is why I don't read Flash books. But I can totally see where you're coming from, especially from the Infinity War side. It was not it does not compare to the book, in my opinion. Nowhere near.
All right, so we got a few minutes left here, and one thing I kind of wanted to talk about, because I wanted to make just a broad X-Men topic here.
Before we do that.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Nobody's going to try to prove you wrong, Bear. You're right. All you had to do was agree with me.
So I wanted to at least talk about one X-Men story that you guys feel like is underappreciated or, underutilized. So just because this is the X-Men special, I just want to talk some of the X-Men comics as well, besides the movies. So, Drew, do you have an X-Men tale, story, full storyline, single issue that you think deserves more people's attention?
I've got several, but I will go ahead and throw two at you right now that I really, really enjoy, that I think more people need to get their hands on and read. Wolverine and the X-Men by Jason Aaron. Post-Schism, Scott started his own school out in the wilderness where he teaches X-Men how to be revolutionaries. And Wolverine just took over the Xavier School, named it the Jean Grey School, and started training kids how to live their lives as mutants. You get a lot of really, really great stories here. You get a lot of Wolverine's past coming back to haunt him as the headmaster of the school. You get Wolverine dealing with untold amounts of stress that he never faced in a battle with the Hulk, because he's got to make sure that all these kids are safe and taken care of. I think it's really, really fantastic. And you got Jason Aaron writing the damn thing, man. A lot of really great Nick Bradshaw art throughout, and really great character work. And if you like the young X-Men, if you like X-Men in a school, it's for you. I also Toad was a janitor. That's totally right. Toad was the janitor.
That's right.
It's fantastic. I'll throw out one more, but I'm going to shout out Gomer's choice here. Remender on X-Force. I know you're a big fan of that as well, Carson. So
Yeah,
I'll give you some time to talk about that. But I really, really enjoyed X-Men Red, which was right after her resurrection. Jean Grey went, we need to act as a nation. Oh, man, spoiler alert for what Hickman's going to do in 2 years. And we need to look at mutantdom as something to fight for in the proper way. And I really like what she did there. You get a nice long it wasn't a long series, but you got a really nice oversized arc, I think. So what did it go, like 13 issues or something like that, with Cassandra Nova. So Cassandra Nova is the big bad in that. You get some new characters. You get Honey Badger hanging out, who was introduced in Tom Taylor's all-new Wolverine as a clone of Logan. So there's some really great stuff, man. I really dig it. Comer in the chat popping me right there. Wait, Jean Grey resurrected? Yeah, man. Apparently you can't kill that bitch.
Yeah, Gomer had 2 great picks in the chat. And I want to see everybody else's picks in the chat, of course. But he picked Remender's X-Force, which I'll talk about X-Force here in a second. And then Peter David's X-Factor, the Madrix Investigations Agency. A very, very underrated run for Peter David. I definitely want to reread that whole thing because I started with the Messiah Complex stuff, which, by the way, my pick for this whole suggestion was going to be the Messiah Complex storyline because it definitely looks back on a story like this and branches it out and makes it a pretty big event out of it. Basically, in that one, you have the post House of M Marvel Universe, which is where no more mutants was whispered, and we only had 108 mutants, I believe.
The Pretender.
So when Hope Summers is born, it causes all kinds of chaos. Cerebro basically explodes. So the X-Men have to run and figure out what's going on. And then you have like all of the other affiliations trying to either save or attack this baby Hope, where you have, the evil hate mutant church attacking it with Stryker and Lady Deathstrike. I think Mr. Sinister's trying to get his hands on the baby so he can experiment on it and figure out how she was born.
Is that baby a Summers? Let me get my fingers on it.
Exactly. And then you have, and then all of a sudden, then both time travelers are going after this. So you have Bishop, who's going after the baby because he's always trying to do, protect the future. But there's a huge twist with him, which I don't really want to talk about here. But who is the ultimate hero for Hope Summers? Cable. Cable is revealed to be like the person who ultimately saves Hope from all these crazy organizations. So it just becomes a battle royal of people trying to either save or hurt Hope Summers, and it just turns into a crazy story. My favorite thing is the way they crossed over the other stories, because I was just getting back into X-Men at this point. So it was great to peek into X-Factor's book and see what's going on with Jamie Madrix and, him basically building upon the world and throwing Layla Miller in there out of nowhere on top of everything, and seeing her have to go to the future and live in the post-apocalyptic future for a while and get that M branded into her face like Bishop did and all that stuff. And she figures out what happened there. And then you get the Craig Kyle Chris Yost X-Force integrated into all that and spawned off of that story as well, where Cyclops, after the story, is a little bit more aggressive in his everything he does. And he basically commissions out X-Force, like even Gore Vidal was saying, to avoid things like this in the future. They want to attack the threats before they become threats to mutants, because there's only so few mutants left. That he tells Wolverine, he's like, we got to go after this stuff now. We're not going to be defensive anymore. We're going to be on the offensive. And that eventually splits off in what would become Schism later and all that storyline just Drew talked about. So this is around the time they did just a really good job of branching all of this stuff together and then branching out on it later too, for sure.
then you get into the Bendis run, which people it's got its ups and its downs, but it coincides with that Wolverine the X-Men run in Marvel now, which also coincides with the X-Force and Uncanny X-Force books at the same time, which are all about the fallout of the Messiah complex with Bishop and Cable at each other's throats. There's really a lot of cool stuff going on in there. Did you by chance read the Generation Hope book?
I only read a couple issues of that one.
I thought it was fun. I thought that was fun. It's like all these new mutants are starting to manifest, and Hope is kind of the one in charge of putting them on a team and training them on away missions. It's good stuff.
Andy, I know you usually are looking for recommendations and stuff.
Ruben wants to know if he won something.
He sure did. I'm going to email him after the show with details. So, Andy, are there any of these stories you'd like to check out, or do you have a read yourself you want to recommend to everybody?
Well, I've been digging through bins for over a year now based on a couple of your recommendations from you and Drew, and that's Morrison's run of New X-Men and that Messiah complex I've been trying to build. I've run into a snag where just recently over the last obviously our current world situation, but even before that, X-Men stuff just gets cleared the hell out of bins.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, where I'm at, there are no more X-Men dollar bin books anywhere, regardless of filler or anything like that. If it's in high grade and it's $1, it's gone, long gone. I've been trying to build that Morrison run to sit down and read that, and that Messiah complex. I'm only a handful of issues away of being complete on that Messiah complex, and that Morrison run, I think I'm just gonna have to find an eBay seller that's got the whole run. I know you've given me a couple issues, and I found a couple of issues, but it's 114 all the way. It goes quite a long ways.
It does, and you can stop after. Here Comes Tomorrow is the final part of the actual arc. You can probably skip that if you want, though, because it's not very good, but the art is beautiful in it. But after that, I believe Chuck Austin takes over. You don't have to get those. Don't just
Chuck Austin is terrible, but
he's not the best.
As a completionist collector, once I'm that far in, I generally kind of stick with the title if I've liked it that much, even because usually once you get through that run of not so great, there's something that you're going to get delivered after that, and that's usually what I look forward to.
Gomer mentioned a story that I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it or not. It's called Hawkstock.
Andy, shoot me the list of new X-Men you need. I
thought you were just going to say, Andy, shoot me.
Oh, yeah. I did want to read a couple more chat picks from this topic. Hopefully we didn't miss too many. Gore Vidal way up top said, Claremont/Paul Smith's Morlock stories are fantastic. And then let's see who else we had. William Bird posted Paul Smith on X-Men issue 166 as one of his favorites on Brood World. Yeah, I definitely need to keep reading into more of that Claremont stuff to get to that point. And then Gore agrees he likes the Paul Smith stuff as well. And then William Bird also posts X-Men 183, Juggernaut and Colossus in a bar fight while Nightcrawler and Wolverine drink beer and watch. That sounds phenomenal. I'm definitely going to have to read X-Men 183. So I think with that pretty much concludes our X-Men special. So before we get into the last shout, you look like you have something to say, Andy.
What's on the poll for next week, though?
That's why I'm glad you just mentioned that, because that's where I'm going next. So for our poll next week, we already have it posted on YouTube.com.
I think you could take your poll and shove it, Carson.
Oh, alert, my God.
Alert. Wild card, baby. I'm cashing that in because I want to read Messiah Complex next week. I'm tired of wondering.
Yes.
I'm going digital. I'll get it all right now. I want to read Messiah Complex really bad.
Oh, it's the best day ever.
I've been itching to like Messiah Complex has hit the polls like I think twice over the last year we've been doing the show, and it's never come to fruition. I'm making it happen with the wild card, which means after next week the wild cards respawn.
Nice. All right. So we're pushing everything forward.
Inhumans.
So next week, Andy said it. Next week we're reading Messiah Complex. And then after that, we're going to go back to the insane, crazy futures with Hulk Future Imperfect. And then we'll just leave up the poll that we got going on now. It's just going to be week 59. I can't take it down. I can't edit the thing.
No, we don't have that ability.
Right. So we're just going to keep rolling with that poll. So your options, I guess. What's up, Drew?
You can't take that poll down. It's already there.
No, it's already in existence.
We lack the ability. We can't change it.
Vote Bone and have Alec come in.
Yeah, there you go. Actually, so far it's winning. So for, I guess, week 59, week 59's poll, it says 58, but now thanks to Andy, it's 59. There are some good picks, and a lot of these picks came from our Comic Discord server. So don't forget to join the Comic Discord server, which I'm sure Drew put the link down below in the description.
If Andy put it in the other videos, I copied and pasted it.
Perfect.
So that's on Andy.
Me/Andy/Drew put it in the comments because I think Andy copied and pasted the thing I did once. No, actually I copied. But anyway, we'll get to the point. Week 59's poll. Suggestion number 1, Superman. Whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow? I believe that was suggested by our friend Chris Barrett, which I think that is a phenomenal read. One of my all-time favorites. It's Alan Moore's Superman. You got to love it. Another one, vastly underrated read. I believe Scott Evans was the one who suggested this. Fantastic Four Unthinkable by Mark Waid, Mike Wieringo. Excellent read that doesn't get enough recognition.
It's Mark Waid's favorite work that he's ever done. He told us that in Baltimore.
Yes, he did. He actually did. Unfortunately, there was no audio for that, but we're not.
He just told the two of us. Like, nobody else needed to hear it as long as we heard it.
And I know Mr. Gretzky 9966, he was on the long Halloween special with us. He had a suggestion or two as well in this poll, but we also threw in the Six Gun by Cullen Bunn as suggested by our Discord viewership. Teen Titans, The Judas Contract by Marv Wolfman and George Perez. And then last but certainly not least, this one came right from Andy, Bone by Jeff Smith, which is winning the poll right now at 45%. We'll see about that in a couple weeks. But yeah, I'm excited. We get the Read Messiah Complex. This is going to be great. Hopefully, you guys get a chance to read along with us. And it's a longer read, so we got to start reading now, Andy. And then next week, how about this? We talked about this gimmick for the wild cards, and maybe we'll get a little bit of a feeler here from the chat. We have 3 wild cards to go around between each of us. What if we did random draws for a DC wild card, a Marvel wild card, and an independent wild card?
Ooh.
Okay, so one of us gets a Marvel book to pull. Yes. One of us gets... Okay.
Yeah.
All right, blind draw.
So it's random on who gets the cards, too. So
yeah, we'll do a spinner gimmick or something.
Sure,
It'll be a fun
spinner gimmick.
Drew can end up with the DC card.
That's fine. I'm making you guys read every issue of Nightfall.
Oh.
And then Great Legend saying if Fantastic Four Six Gun wins, he will be on the episode. So consider that in your votes as well. But big thanks, guys, for joining us tonight. DruManchu, where can people find you?
People can find me at DruManchu Comics on Twitter. Find me at DruManchu on the Instagrams. You can find me DruManchu on the YouTubes. Maybe I'll post a video that isn't related to Carson's contest. The next video I'm probably going to do is my haul from Carson's contest. So be looking for that. You guys can also find us on Monday nights here on the Comic Core, but we're also airing right now on Mainframe Comic-Con on YouTube. We need some subscribers for that channel. We're doing a subscription drive over there. So if you guys are watching us on Comic Core, do me a favor, go to Mainframe Comic-Con on YouTube, click that subscribe button. There is regular content going up there. We are working on curating some more content and getting something more consistent over there, and you guys are going to be enjoying Modern Men over there or over here. It really doesn't matter where to us as long as you're enjoying it. And beyond that, you guys can search DruManchu Comics on eBay. There's nothing listed right now, but I'm going to be listing a whole bunch of books tomorrow. So, yeah, eBay store, baby. Make some money.
What about you, Andy? Where can people find ComicManAndy?
Hit that little @ symbol, ComicManAndy. You can find me on all the social media platforms, and you can find me here every Monday night for Modern Men, the best book club around right now, and we're still going strong. You guys can find me on the Comic Core other channel, other shows during the week. The Wednesday show. I'll hopefully be back for the Thursday show in time after the holidays are over and everything's done being crazy. And I got my own little channel over there. Check it out, where I'm doing some Mandalorian reaction stuff because I'm really kind of learning some editing and having some fun with that. And definitely learned about the fair use laws and the copyright laws. So, don't upload some certain stuff. That's been a lot of fun. I'd appreciate the support because Mandalorian is incredible. I enjoy it a lot. That's a ton of fun. It's a hot topic going on right now. And more importantly, like Drew said, hit up that Mainframe Comic-Con and give them a subscription number and help build and spread that and build them for them.
Hey, if you guys have enjoyed those Mainframe things so far, we got something new coming for you. Announcements to be coming this week as soon as we get some legal division things cleared up and make sure that we're not going to get sued for posting advertisements for this thing. We're going to post some advertisements for this thing. So if you guys aren't doing anything Thanksgiving weekend, that Friday, we're going to be coming at you with something pretty awesome.
Nice. All right. You can find me Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, cwoodard19. It's right there if you guys are watching it on the YouTubes. Tomorrow I'll be doing the Tuesday night live stream. I got a package for my first subscriber ever, Fish Tropic, that I need to do a live unboxing for. So
has it been sitting there for a while? Because it might be a fish.
Yeah, you never know. So we'll find out tomorrow. Tune in to see if I killed a fish on accident. The Fish Tropic, big thanks once again. We'll be unboxing that tomorrow. And Andy and I will be live right after that with Turtle Talk Tuesday. I believe we're reading volumes 8 and 9. We got to see the turtles go to the farm just like they did in that movie. So I'm really looking forward to see if that's just going to be a filler run or if it's going to be an intriguing character study of the turtles. We'll find out tomorrow because I haven't read it yet. I'm going to read it tomorrow. And then Mike and I, my friend Mike from Chicago, we recorded Comics of the Atom this weekend.
Comics of the Atom!
You guys can click the link down below in the description. We read Monstrous issue 1. It was a 70-page issue 1, so there was a lot to digest there. So definitely go tune into that as well if you guys hadn't had a chance. And then I still got my October Reads videos up. I know it's November now, but hey, I upload 31 videos. If you guys hadn't had a chance to catch them, only like 5 minutes-ish a piece. Go let me know what you think, because if you guys like them, maybe I'll make some more like that. We'll see. But other than that, thank you guys.
Go into that contest.
What's that?
Oh, I wanted to enter your contest.
Oh, yeah. Drew won something. I'm going to mail out
baby.
tomorrow. So, yeah.
Winner.
You watch my channel, you might win something. You never know.
Take that, Mom.
We're heading out of here, guys. We'll see you next time.